He's Kim Dokja, and this is how he introduces himself to others. And 9 times out of 10, people misunderstand him. His father gave him that name because he wanted him to grow up to be a strong and independent person. But perhaps his name is a curse, because he had been lonely and single his entire life. That is who he is in a nutshell. His hobby is reading serialized web novels on the subway on his way home from work. But that day's subway ride was unlike any other. Kim Dokja was reading a novel on his phone when suddenly a woman approached him and told him that he might get sucked into his phone. He looked up and noticed that the girl was Yusanga from the HR department, so he greeted her with a hello. Yusanga asked him if he was heading home, to which he replied yes, while also asking her the same question. Yusanga then sat next to him while saying that she got lucky her team manager was away on a business trip. Kim Dokja flinched the moment Yusanga sat next to him. Kim Dokja couldn't believe he had run into Yusanga, the most popular girl at work. From the HR assistant manager to the finance team manager, he believed that there was a line of men waiting to drive her home. He asked her if she usually took the subway home and she replied saying someone had stolen her bicycle. Kim Dokja was surprised to learn that Yusanga commuted to work on a bike. Yusanga said she had been working a lot of overtime lately, so she thought she could use the exercise and she had some personal reasons too. Kim Dokja thought that, seeing her up close, he could understand why all the guys were head over heels for her. Well, none of that concerned Kim Dokja as Yusanga and him lived completely different lives. And just so you know, Yusanga wasn't the reason why today's subway ride was different. Kim Dokja was surprised to see Yusanga studying Spanish language on the subway, thinking that she was on a completely different level. He praised her for studying hard, to which Yusanga asked Kim Dokja what he was reading. He immediately put his phone away from her, but she caught a glimpse of it, noting that she loved novels and her favorite authors were Murakami Haruki and Raymond Carver. Yusanga asked Kim Dokja who his favorite author was, to which Kim Dokja replied telling her that she probably wouldn't know even if he told her, thinking that he could never tell her what he was really reading. That's right, Kim Dokja's hobby was reading serialized web novels on the subway on his way home from work. Although he wasn't proud of his hobby, the reason today was unlike any other was because 3 ways to survive the apocalypse, or TWSA for short, which he had been reading for the past 10 years was ending today. People might wonder why he was making such a fuss over the ending of a web novel, but this story in particular was very special to Kim Dokja. He had been reading the series since he was in 8th grade. He read it when he was bullied at school, when he failed his entrance exams and ended up at a third-rate college, when bad luck got him stationed on the front line during his military service, and even now, as an unstable contract worker getting transferred from company to company. It was bittersweet that the fictitious world he had been following for so many years was now coming to an end, and today was the day the epilogue of TWSA would be uploaded. He couldn't believe the series went on for so long with just an average view count of 1, it was a story written for him and only him. He wanted to support the author with a donation, but it was hard enough for him to even make ends meet, so he just thanked the author by writing a comment. He wondered if he could be the protagonist if he was in a different genre and if the genre of his life wasn't non-fiction, but fantasy. If one thing was certain it was that the genre of his life was non-fiction, and in this genre, he was no protagonist. He was merely a reader. Suddenly, he received a message from a sender, TLS-123, saying thank you. He wondered if it was the author of TWSA, the sender appreciating Kim Dokja's time and effort for reading his novel, so he asked Kim Dokja to give him his email address because he wanted to show his gratitude to him. A few moments had passed and he finally received the gift the sender was talking about. The content stated that starting at 7 p.m. TWSA would become a paid content. The time at that moment was 6:55, so that meant he had 5 minutes left. He checked his phone to find the content, but no results were found. He thought that it was weird, wondering if they removed serials without prior notice when they became paid content. Suddenly the subway lights went off and the subway train's wheel malfunctioned, causing the train to be in disarray. The passengers were in panic, thinking if it was a terrorist attack. The train finally stopped and the people inside were wondering what had happened. Kim Dokja asked Yusanga if she was okay and Yusanga replied yes, asking Kim Dokja what he thought was happening. Kim Dokja told her not to worry, saying it was probably nothing. It was by sheer coincidence that Kim Dokja checked the time at that exact moment. Kim Dokja checked his phone to see the time and it was 7 p.m. He was thinking something when suddenly, an announcement was made telling the passengers to evacuate the train. Kim Dokja and Usanga were worried to what was happening when suddenly a blinding flash came out of thin air, and a system message popped out, stating that the free service of the 8612th planetary system had come to an end and the main scenario would begin now. It was at that moment that the genre of his life changed. The subway came to a halt and the entire cabin grew dark. It was the opening lines of a very familiar story that kept crossing his mind, but he didn't believe it could be real. There was no way this could be true, it was completely impossible. Yet, he still couldn't believe that this was really happening. Suddenly, a creature appeared out of nowhere with two small horns. A downy creature wearing a straw garment was floating midair. It was too peculiar to be called a fairy, too malicious to be called an angel, and too innocent looking to be called a devil, so they called it a dakibi. The passengers were murmuring while looking at the dakibi. At that moment, fiction and reality overlapped. The dakibi spoke using an unknown language and some passengers were wondering what it was saying while others were thinking if it was an augmented reality. Some found the dakibi so ugly. No one knew what was going on except for Kim Dokja. He was thinking that it was definitely a dakibi that appeared in the opening paragraph of TWSA. This creature heralded the tragedy that carried on for thousands of chapters throughout 3 ways to survive the apocalypse. That very same dakibi was now right in front of him. The dakibi asked the passengers if they could hear him. The dakibi said that the language patch was malfunctioning for a bit. One passenger asked the dakibi what he was doing, asking if he was filming a movie. The passenger added that he had to go to his audition. 3 more passengers confronted the dakibi, telling it to start the train already. The dakibi told them to calm down, take a seat, and listen because it had something very important to tell them all. With everything that was happening in the subway train, Kim Dokja was certain he knew exactly how the story would go. He thought that he had to stop them, but he wondered how. He told Usanga not to move. The dakibi lost its patience, which led it to kill many passengers while saying that they weren't filming a movie and it wasn't a dream or a novel and it certainly wasn't the reality that they were all familiar with. He hated to admit it, but this was real. His doubt and disbelief slowly faded away as he watched the floor quickly become painted in blood. The dakibi pointed out that all of the passengers had had quite a cushy life until now, and that they were able to breathe, eat, excrete, and reproduce without paying the costs, adding that they had all been enjoying privileged lives. The dakibi with a wicked smile said that it was all over now, saying nothing is free in life. The passengers' faces were full of fear and anxiety, not knowing what to do. Suddenly, one man was brave enough to confront the dakibi even after what he had witnessed. The man asked the dakibi if what it wanted was money. Kim Dokja and Usanga thought the man was familiar. The man told the dakibi that if it was money it was after, he would give it as much as it wanted, letting it know that it was what he did. He then asked the dakibi how much it needed. The dakibi said that money was good, it was an object that signified an intersubjective agreement between humans, but it was only valid within the confines of their space-time. That paper had no value in the macroscopic dimension. With one snap of the dakibi's finger, it managed to burn the man's check, warning him that if he ever pulled a stunt like that again, it would blow his head up. The dakibi said that there was no time for chit-chat, adding that their debt was piling up as they spoke. The dakibi wouldn't bother explaining it to the passengers, saying it would be faster for them to try to earn the money themselves. After that, a status window popped up and the main scenario had arrived. The main scenario 1 title was, Prove Your Value, with the objective to kill 1 or more living organisms. Usanga tried to call the police but they weren't picking up, so she asked Kim Dokja what they should do. Kim Dokja told her to stay calm and reminded her that she had played the game the development team was currently working on, the one where only a handful of people survived the apocalypse. Usanga was confused and asked him what that had to do with anything. He told her to think of their situation like they were part of that game now, adding that every game has rules and they just needed to follow them and figure out what those rules were. Even after Kim Dokja's explanation, Usanga still didn't understand what he was talking about. A dakibi with antennae, a litter of dead bodies in the subway cabin, trembling office workers covered in blood, an old lady praying fervently in her seat. Kim Dokja still couldn't believe this was really happening, but he couldn't deny it any longer now. He had no choice but to admit it. He didn't know why, but it was clear that TWSA, which he had been reading for over 10 years, was coming to life right before his eyes. Kim Dokja closed his eyes, trying to think of a way to survive. Suddenly, a man was trying to calm everyone down, telling them to stop what they were doing. The man explained that in a national emergency such as this one, even a small commotion could lead to heavy casualties. So he declared that he would take charge of the situation. The people weren't happy, asking the man who he was. The man showed them his identity card and introduced himself as Hyun Seong Lee, an army lieutenant currently serving in Unit 6502. Kim Dokja already knew this would turn into a national emergency, so he wasn't surprised. But it was something else that took him by surprise. Kim Dokja knew him. He had never seen him in person, but he knew him by name. He was one of the supporting characters in TWSA. Kim Dokja couldn't believe a character from TWSA had actually appeared. The Dakibi showed up in a live broadcast, reminding everyone that it was not just some joke like terrorism. The Dakibi raised the difficulty, making the time limit reduced to 10 minutes, and added a penalty. If the first death did not occur within the next 5 minutes, every living organism in the cabin would be terminated. Kim Dokja thought that everything was going exactly as he remembered it. The events were unfolding exactly the same as the beginning of TWSA, but he couldn't help but feel that something wasn't right. Kim Dokja was wondering why the main character hadn't appeared yet since Hyun Seong Lee, one of the major supporting characters, had already appeared. He thought to himself that if he remembered correctly, the main character should be making an appearance any minute now. Suddenly, a loud bang was heard and people screamed out of fear. Somebody yelled, saying someone had been murdered in the cabin behind them. The young man was about to block the door when he noticed that there was some kind of invisible wall in front of the door. A system message popped up, stating that no one may enter or leave the cabin until the scenario was complete. On a live broadcast, the Dakibi laughed a bit, mentioning that it was getting interesting for some cabins, while others hadn't even started yet. The Dakibi showed them an example of what would happen if they didn't do anything in the next 5 minutes. In the live feed, students from Taepyeong Girls High School were seen being killed one after the other, but one particular female student was seen killing her classmate, making her the only survivor in Channel Bay 23515, Jai Hai Lee, a second-year student from Class B at Taepyeong Girls High School. The Dakibi wickedly laughed while saying it was fun. Upon seeing what they witnessed on the live feed, the people inside the train were being wary of each other. Kim Dokja found it puzzling that the main character had yet to appear. Events that he was familiar with, as well as events he did not know were part of the story, were occurring simultaneously. He checked his phone again to see if the TWSA was in there, but it was not. However, he recalled the email the author sent him and decided to open it. He noticed that there was a single attachment and clicked on it, surprised to see the content. It was the novel he had been trying to find earlier. Each of the TWSA survivors receive a special attribute and a skill that is linked to that attribute. He attempted to open his attributes window many times, but he was unable to do so. Kim Dokja pondered what was going on, thinking that if he could not access his attributes window, he would not be able to discover what his attribute and skill were. He then decided to read the attached file, and upon doing so, a system message popped up that his attribute had been activated and he was now able to read at a faster speed. Kim Dokja was surprised to learn that his attribute was to read faster. He said that it only took him less than a minute to read the opening chapter of TWSA. He was grateful for his attribute and now understood why he had felt uneasy. The reason the events surrounding him were different from what he remembered was because the protagonist of TWSA's prologue was actually in the subway cabin behind the one he was on. Yusenga was trembling in fear while asking Kim Dokja if they should try to stop them. Kim Dokja was worried, thinking that he knew only 2 people would survive in cabin 3807, which he was currently in. Those survivors were Hyun Seong Lee and the teenager who was beating up an elderly woman, who was called Namwon Kim. Kim Dokja thought to himself that Yusenga would most likely die, except for Hyun Seong Lee and Namwon Kim, and that everyone in the cabin would die, including himself. A man called Mr. Hans tried to stop Namwon Kim from beating up the nameless elderly woman, imploring him to respect the elders. Namwon Kim gave them a menacing look and stated that the army was not going to save them and that someone had to die, adding that they had to decide who would die. He also commented that he knew exactly what they were thinking, that they thought they were above all, that how could they kill others just to survive, like animals. He said that normally he would agree with them, but their current situation was different. Namwon Kim further added that they had no choice, that it was kill or be killed, and no one could blame them when their lives were on the line. He told them to think wisely because the world they knew had just ended, and in this new world, they had new rules to follow. It was Namwon Kim who drove a wedge into the crack and destroyed the sense of morality that had been binding society together. Hyun Seong Lee cringed while the people beat up the elderly woman, unable to make himself look at them. If no one died within the next 5 minutes, everyone in there would die. Kim Dokja suddenly recalled a line he had read a long time ago: executioners pull the lever of the electric chair at the same time, they do so in order to conceal who really killed the prisoner. Kim Dokja thought that it was as if he was reading that part of the novel, that they were in a different world and he was simply a spectator, watching. Kim Dokja thought that the nameless elderly woman became the first victim, and if he carelessly meddled with the course of the story, there may be less of the original plot left for him to work with. But he questioned if it was fair to stand by and watch her die just so that he could live. Yu Sanga rushed at them, but Kim Dokja immediately stopped her, reminding her not to be so reckless, as it was dangerous. Yu Sanga knew this, but she could not help herself. Kim Dokja thought that some people were just destined to shine regardless of the genre they were in, but Yu Sanga could not change the course of the story because she was not the heroine in this world. Kim Dokja told Yu Sanga to stay there, begging her to just do as he said for now. He told her that, if she listened to him this once, he would promise he would not ever bother her again. Kim Dokja exhaled, thinking that it was too early for him to interfere and it was not part of his plan. The reason he did not interfere sooner was not because he was afraid of Namwon or the others, or because he condoned their savage ways. He was merely waiting for the right moment, and that moment was for a smoke to envelop the cabin. As soon as he heard the loud bang on the back cabin, Kim Dokja dashed forward to save the elderly woman. Kim Dokja tackled Namwon Kim, causing him to be thrown away. Namwon Kim was enraged, asking Kim Dokja what his problem was, but Kim Dokja paid him no attention, instead looking for something. He eventually found what he was searching for and approached the kid, taking the insects that the kid was keeping, saying that he needed them. He gave the kid one insect. Kim Dokja yelled, telling them to cease what they were doing, saying that killing the old lady did not mean they would be able to live. Kim Dokja got their attention, inquiring what would be next after killing the old lady, adding that if the old lady died, they would be able to buy some time as they had killed something within the given time limit. He also mentioned that if what the Dakibi said was true, it meant that they all had to kill one person each. He then asked them who they would kill next. Namwon Kim laughed a bit, saying that it was obvious that they would kill losers like Kim Dokja next. He told Kim Dokja not to fret about his turn beforehand, declaring that the chances were 50-50. Kim Dokja knew that he would say that. Kim Dokja asked them why they would gamble with their lives when there was a way to survive this without becoming a murderer. He reminded them that the scenario did not say they had to kill a human being, saying that it stated they had to kill one or more living organisms. The madness that had driven them to kill the old lady now came crashing down onto Kim Dokja. He wondered why he was smiling and why his heart was beating joyfully in this precarious situation. He questioned if he had always been this kind of person. He obtained the first kill by killing the insect in his hand. He then threw away the remaining insects, which caused the people to panic. Namwon Kim inquired why Kim Dokja had thrown away the remaining insects, adding that Kim Dokja could have just handed them over. Kim Dokja replied that there were only 3 insects left in the box. Namwon Kim laughed hard, asking him if he had thrown the insects since not all of them could live. Kim Dokja replied affirmatively. Namwon Kim told him not to be ridiculous, saying that no one with a right mind would pull a stunt like this for such a stupid reason. Namwon Kim, with a wildly sinister expression, told him to be honest. He also mentioned that Kim Dokja wanted to watch them fight for their lives. Kim Dokja thought that Namwon Kim was that kind of person, cruel, rampant, and enjoying situations like this. A character profile window popped up, indicating the overall information of Namwon Kim. Upon viewing the profile window, he learned that Namwon Kim's attribute was an edgelord. Most teen edgelords in the TWSA could not handle the nightmare that became reality and committed suicide, but Namwon Kim was different. This boy, who would later be bestowed with a fitting nickname, was no ordinary edgelord. He had been waiting for the apocalypse for a long time and he adapted to this world at an unusual speed. Right now, this delusional demon wanted to join forces with Kim Dokja. A system message popped up, indicating Kim Dokja's increased understanding of Namwon Kim. Kim Dokja rejected Namwon Kim's offer, to which Namwon Kim responded that it was a bummer. Kim Dokja thought to himself that if he were to team up with Namwon Kim, his survival would be guaranteed for now. He realized that if he hadn't read TWSA, he probably would have made a different choice. But being a reader, Kim Dokja was aware of his character and his future, and after seeing him in person, he realized how much he disliked him. Namwon Kim then warned Kim Dokja to stay out of his way, informing him that he had unfinished business with the granny. He added that he wouldn't let the bug he had caught escape from his grasp. Kim Dokja grabbed Namwon Kim's hand, surprising him. Namwon Kim asked Kim Dokja if he was trying to act like a hero now, and declared that he made him sick. He then attacked Kim Dokja, but Kim Dokja managed to dodge by a hair's breadth. When Namwon Kim attacked again, Kim Dokja blocked it this time. He noticed that Namwon Kim had unlocked the skill of the Edgelord attribute, and was fond of his newfound power. Kim Dokja thought to himself that it was probably why the protagonist had still recruited him, even though he was like a psychopath. A system message then popped up, stating that Kim Dokja's understanding of Namwon Kim had increased again. Another system message then appeared, stating that Kim Dokja had unlocked level 1 of his personal skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Kim Dokja then wondered what Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint was for. The fight between Kim Dokja and Namwon Kim continued, yet Namwon Kim was unable to hit Kim Dokja even once. As soon as Kim Dokja's second skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, was activated, he knew what Namwon Kim was going to do, as if he could read his mind. Kim Dokja then fell down, realizing that all he could do was dodge Namwon Kim's attacks, and retaliating wasn't possible. He thought that he just needed to hold on a little longer. Kim Dokja informed Namwon Kim that there was only 2 minutes left before the main scenario ended. Kim Dokja noticed that the old lady was still lying on the ground, and thought that if she died, Namwon would clear the scenario. Determined not to let someone like Namwon move on to the next scenario, Kim Dokja moved his body to protect the old lady. However, what Kim Dokja hadn't anticipated was that Namwon was waiting for him to do that, so he could make him vulnerable. Kim Dokja was completely open, yet thanks to his skill, he knew what Namwon was planning to target, his heart. Namwon then used knife fighting level 1 to attack Kim Dokja, and thanks to his Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint skill, the only damage Kim Dokja received was a graze on his shoulder. He then grabbed the old lady, thinking that death was just around the corner. He wondered if he would die if he lost to Namwon Kim, and thought that he had to adhere to the rules if he wanted to survive. Namwon Kim then told him to get it over with, as they were running out of time. Kim Dokja called out to Namwon Kim, asking him if an insect egg was also considered an organism. Namwon asked him what he was talking about. Kim Dokja then told him that the answer was yes, and suddenly a bunch of system messages popped up, informing him that he had obtained 100 bonus coins. Namwon Kim then attacked him, asking how he was supposed to know the answer. A system message then asked Kim Dokja if he wanted a tutorial on coin usage, but he chose to skip it and invested 2,700 coins in his stamina. As a result, Kim Dokja's stamina rose from level 1 to level 10, and his physical durability had greatly increased. Namwon Kim tried to pierce Kim Dokja, yet it didn't work. Namwon Kim then immediately backed away, wondering what had happened and how. With a serious look, Kim Dokja stated that it wasn't him who was going to die, but Namwon Kim. With less than 1 minute left before the first main scenario ended, Namwon Kim tried to attack Kim Dokja relentlessly, yet Kim Dokja didn't even flinch. The timer then ended, and that was the end of Namwon Kim, and the number of survivors was 5. After the main scenario number 1 ended, the white Takibi showed up. The survivors of cabin 3707 were Hyeon Seong Lee, Sangayu, Giliang Lee, Myongo Han, and Dokja Kim. Namwon Kim was right, Kim Dokja was just like him. Kim Dokja could have saved those people, and he would be lying if he said he didn't feel guilty. Yet it was strange how he was able to remain so calm. It felt like he was just reading the novel instead of actually taking part in it. Due to killing non-resistant organisms, the number of coins he obtained was halved. He had obtained 6,200 coins, yet the coins he used to level up his stats were deducted, leaving him with a total of 3,500 coins. Kim Dokja thought that the world they once knew had collapsed. And a new world was being born. He was the only one who knew how this world would end. The train then stopped in the middle of the bridge, where a giant snake-like monster, known as an ichthyosaur, or sea serpent, was seen just outside the bridge. It would later be classified as a Grade 7 monster in TWSA. The world of TWSA prioritized scenarios over everything else, so they wouldn't be attacked by any creatures unless they were part of the scenario. The white Dakibi was so happy, as there were a lot of constellations watching his channel. Constellations were the most mysterious beings in TWSA, and the masterminds behind this tragedy, live-streaming the scenarios from across the universe. In other words, they were the ones who watched the Dakibi's channels. In the original story, Namwoon Kim killed almost everyone in this cabin. Due to the death of Namwoon Kim, 2 constellations felt slight hostility towards Kim Dokja. Some constellations must have been furious about the outcome, and this error probably happened because Kim Dokja had killed Namwoon Kim. Judging from how the constellations' preferences were popping up, Kim Dokja guessed that it was officially the beginning of the story. He thought that it was just unbelievable, as he had been in their position yesterday, yet now they were the ones watching him. But of course, if there were constellations who hated him, there were also constellations who supported him. Kim Dokja thought that he hoped all the constellations would enjoy the show, as sooner or later they would end up paying the admission fee with their lives. Usanga then asked Kim Dokja if he was okay, to which Kim Dokja replied that he was sorry, as he hadn't been able to save the old lady. Usanga was concerned, and was about to say something but decided not to. Kim Dokja asked her what it was, to which she hesitantly replied that it was nothing. She then thanked Kim Dokja for throwing the cage towards her. Kim Dokja replied that it was just a coincidence and it wouldn't happen again. Kim Dokja didn't know what Usanga was thinking, but he was sure she was smart enough to survive the chaos. He thought that she probably understood what he said. Kim Dokja thought to himself that due to his choice, some lived while some died, and he didn't deserve the gratitude of those who survived. The Dakibi was very happy, asking them if they had proven their worth. The Dakibi couldn't believe that there were 21 constellations watching his channel. Kim Dokja thought to himself that there were 5 survivors, which was more than he had expected. He had anticipated Hyeon Seong Lee to survive, since he was strong and athletic. He then looked at the kid who was called Gileong Lee, remembering the time when he had given him the insect. Knowing that it would be dangerous for the kid to survive on his own, Kim Dokja asked Gileong Lee if he wanted to live. When the kid nodded, Kim Dokja told him to team up with him. He thought that it wasn't sympathy that had motivated him, and if he had to use a word to describe it, it would be hypocrisy. A status window pop-up stating that a few constellations are impressed with Kim Dokja's good deed, so the constellations have gifted him 200 coins. He thought that even though it seems shameless, it can't be helped, because he, too, want to live. Considering the events that will follow, Kim Dokja have to get the attention of the constellations. The Dakibi said that a lot of interesting things had happened today, adding that the guy in the next cabin was also a total nutcase. Mr. Han, the lucky guy, asked the Dakibi if he was going to let them go now. Mr. Han then further added that they had done everything that the Dakibi had asked for. Kim Dokja looked at him, wondering why Mr. Han was even taking the subway, as he knew that Mr. Han was very well off. The Dakibi then wickedly smiled, asking Mr. Han if he hadn't seen what was going on outside. The Dakibi asked him if he was sure he wanted him to let Mr. Han go. But upon seeing the monsters outside, Mr. Han was left speechless. The Dakibi was impressed that none of the 5 survivors in the cabin had died during the first scenario. He thought that they had proven that even bugs deserved to survive. The Dakibi then said that every hardship deserved a reward, and the reward for the first scenario was that they were now qualified to be sponsored by constellations, telling them that it was exciting. However, none of the 5 survivors seemed to be very excited. The Dakibi then let them know that it was a pretty big deal. Upon hearing this, Kim Dokja thought to himself that he was the only person who knew what a constellation or sponsor was. The Dakibi explained to them that they were all terribly weak right now, and that if they were to move on to the next scenario in their current state, they would be killed by even a weak ground rat, let alone a croc. However, he informed them that there were great beings in this world who pitied them, and wished to sponsor them. Hyeon Seong Lee asked the Dakibi what he meant by this, and who was sponsoring who. The Dakibi then said that they were really hopeless, adding that there was no point in explaining it all over again. He then decided to show it to them instead, snapping his fingers and causing a status window to appear. Kim Dokja had 4 sponsors to choose from: Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, Demonic Judge of Fire, Secretive Plotter, and Prisoner of the Golden Headband. Usanga called out to Kim Dokja, saying that 2 strange options had suddenly popped up. Kim Dokja replied, saying he didn't know anything either. He told her to just think of it as taking an aptitude test. Kim Dokja thought that Usanga was lucky too for having been offered 2 sponsorships. While Usanga was having a hard time deciding, Kim Dokja thought that the ones who provided support to them were the constellations, and now, sponsor selection, one of the main events in TWSA, had started. The sponsor selection was a system in which the constellations watched through the Dakibi's channels. The constellations chose a human they liked as their incarnation, and in Kim Dokja's case, 4 constellations wanted to sponsor him as their incarnation. However, the constellations never revealed their true names. Considering the protagonist of TWSA initially had 5 options, 4 wasn't a small number at all. Using the hints in their nicknames, such as Abyssal, Demon, and Garden, they had to try and deduce their identities themselves. However, this was a piece of cake for a reader of TWSA like Kim Dokja. Kim Dokja knew that the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon was a powerful being that led the constellation group Black Cloud. From what he recalled, his true name was quite long. The incarnation of this sponsor received an additional boost to their power level, making it a smart choice for the early scenarios, where stamina and strength were vital. However, the benefits ended there, as the more one used this constellation's power, the more they lost their senses, eventually leading to psychosis and a killer instinct. This constellation usually supported edgelord attributes. Kim Dokja was pretty sure that the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon was the constellation who supported Namwon Kim in the novel. He then wondered why the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon had chosen him. He decided that he would just put him on hold for now. Kim Dokja was amazed to see the Demonic Judge of Fire on his list. He thought that, judging from the name, one could assume this constellation was demonic. However, ironically, demonic meant that this constellation wasn't actually a demon. The words fire and judge indicated that this entity made judgments through fire, meaning it was actually Archangel Uriel. Kim Dokja remembered that someone had chosen this constellation as their sponsor in the novel. He said that Uriel wasn't a bad choice, but he decided that he would explore his other options first. Kim Dokja further added that constellations of absolute good were powerful, but they imposed strict restrictions on the ones they sponsored. Kim Dokja's third option was the Secretive Plotter. Kim Dokja thought that he was an avid reader of TWSA, but he had never seen this option before. However, he was certain that it wasn't a powerful being. Kim Dokja couldn't believe that the Prisoner of the Golden Headband constellation had made an offer already. The Prisoner of the Golden Headband may have sounded negative at first, but one had to pay attention to the proper noun, Golden Headband. This referred to the smallest prison in the world, the owner of Mount Huagua who lived with the pain of the binding head shackle, the handsome monkey king with the golden gaze and fury eyes. The great sage, Heaven's equal Sun Wukong. One of the characters was sponsored by him in the novel. Kim Dokja knew that the Prisoner of the Golden Headband had the power to crush hundreds of incarnations with a single swing of his staff and eradicate thousands of monsters with a single lightning bolt. He still remembered that passage very clearly, since the author had emphasized it so strongly. He then wondered why such a powerful constellation had shown interest in him. He pondered if he would be able to beat the main character if he chose the great sage's Heaven's equal as his sponsor. The sponsor selection had ended, and the Dakibi declared that someone had made a very interesting choice. He then allowed the survivors to take a short break for 10 minutes, while he prepared for the next scenario. Kim Dokja then told everyone to gather around, which they did so hesitantly. Hyeon Lee then shook Kim Dokja's hand and introduced himself. As they shook hands, Kim Dokja thought that Hyeon Lee had a strong grip, but he wasn't surprised. After all, Hyeon Lee was the tanker in the early stages of TWSA. He thought that he needed to recruit Hyeon Lee. Hyeon Lee thanked Kim Dokja for what he had done back then, informing him that if it hadn't been for him, they would have probably been dead by now. Kim Dokja was about to say something when suddenly, Mr. Han grabbed his shoulder, asking if he knew him. Kim Dokja replied in the affirmative, causing Mr. Han to be surprised. He told Kim Dokja that he should call him Mr. Han, but Kim Dokja replied, saying that they weren't at work right now. Mr. Han continued his gibberish, but Kim Dokja told him to shut up, urging him to come to his senses and see what was really going on. Kim Dokja mentioned that Mr. Han was not the only one who needed a wake-up call, everyone present needed to come to their senses. He further added that, as the Dakibi had said, this wasn't a joke and he was sure that everyone had realized what was going on by now. Seeing game-like attribute windows and skills, he asked if there was someone who still didn't get what was happening. Hyun Seong Lee said that it was the kind of thing he'd read about in novels while working the night shift. He still couldn't believe it was real, wondering if it was a dream. Kim Dokja replied that it was unfortunate, but it was now their reality. Hyun Seong Lee said that it was a good thing that at least one person was certain of what was going on, and asked Kim Dokja if he had any ideas of what to do next. Kim Dokja replied that they had to get out of there, causing the survivors to be shocked. They started to complain that the idea Kim Dokja gave them was crazy, when suddenly a loud boom was heard on the other side of the door. The survivors were shocked, wondering what was going on. Kim Dokja began to think if they were moving on to the next scenario already, but realized that it couldn't be, since the Dakibi hadn't come back yet. This left him to think that the person on the other side of the door was the sole survivor of subway cabin 3707. Kim Dokja thought it was quite obvious who that was, the true protagonist of this story. He then convinced Hyun Seong Lee that they had to get out of there, saying that if they didn't leave right now, they were all going to die before the next scenario. Hyun Seong Lee said that they couldn't be sure that whatever was on the other side of the door was their enemy. Kim Dokja replied that the person on the other side was the survivor who had killed all those people in his cabin, and asked if they still wanted to meet him. Upon hearing this, they immediately started to find their way out. The invisible force field disappeared after the scenario ended, and they just needed to find a working door, and among the 8 doors in the cabin, they hadn't checked 3 of them yet. The door from the next cabin was about to break open, when suddenly Yu Sanga found a slightly open door. Hyun Sung Lee said that this door was broken too, but Kim Dokja asserted that it was still the only one they had a chance of opening. He then glanced at his status window, where he saw that he had 4,700 coins. Kim Dokja thought that he could use his coins to increase his strength this time, but he wasn't sure what would happen if he did so recklessly. He thought that using his coins so early on could be dangerous. Kim Dokja then told Hyun Sung Lee to use his skill, making Hyun Sung Lee wonder if Kim Dokja was referring to the skill that he was seeing in his status window. Kim Dokja was thankful that Hyun Sung Lee's supporting constellation attribute were the same as in the novel. Kim Dokja said that Hyun Sung Lee probably checked his skills when he opened his attributes window earlier. He added that Hyun Sung Lee was in the army, so there must be a skill he could use right now. He said he had one, but he didn't know how to use it. Kim Dokja then told him to just imagine himself using it, making Hyun Sung Lee ask if that was all it took. Hyun Sung Lee then forced open the door using his skill called Great Mountain Push Level 1. Hyun Sung Lee was so happy that he looked like a child, saying that it had really worked. A system notification then popped up, stating that Hyun Sung Lee had begun to trust Kim Dokja, and Kim Dokja's understanding of Hyun Sung Lee had increased. Kim Dokja thought that the stigma of Hyun Sung Lee had successfully activated. After the door was successfully opened, Kim Dokja and the others ran off towards the bridge. Kim Dokja thought that the steel door connected to subway cabin 3707 would break soon, but he remembered that the steel door wasn't the problem. Kim Dokja was shocked to see the Dakibi floating in front of them. The Dakibi was angry because the survivors hadn't listened to him and stayed put. He said he wasn't done preparing the next scenario. Mr. Han said that they should have stayed inside, and the Dakibi sighed and snapped his fingers, saying that he didn't have a choice now that the survivors were outside. A status window then popped up, signaling the start of the second scenario, a scenario with a category of sub and a difficulty of E. The clear conditions were to get across the collapsed bridge and enter Oksu Station within a time limit of 20 minutes. The reward for clearing the sub scenario was 200 coins. And the penalty for failure was unknown. Kim Dokja had a troubled look as he thought that he knew it. Yu Sanga called out to Kim Dokja, saying something doesn't feel right. She added that it said collapsed bridge, but the bridge wasn't. Kim Dokja told her not to worry about it and just run. Kim Dokja thought that Yu Sanga was right, the bridge was still intact because they had gotten off the train too early. In other words, the bridge would definitely collapse. He thought it might seem underhanded, but it was impossible to clear the sub-scenario without going around the rules. Kim Dokja looked around, thinking that they might make it. Mr. Han noticed a whirlpool, from which a sea monster emerged. Kim Dokja wondered if it was an ichthyosaur, a sea serpent, or a sea commander from its size. The ichthyosaur was about to destroy the bridge. Kim Dokja thought that since the ichthyosaur didn't go after incarnations early on in the story, it had probably shown up to destroy the bridge. He thought that they only had about 200 yards left, and at their speed, they should be able to cross the bridge before it collapsed. However, the Dakibi wasn't going to let them escape so easily, saying it was no fun if the game was too easy. With one snap of his finger, the Dakibi decided to shake things up a bit by adjusting the difficulty from E to D, and dead bodies suddenly started to chase them. Usanga thought they were zombies. Hyan Seong Lee and the kid managed to arrive at Oksu Station, but they were worried for Kim Dokja and the others. Kim Dokja, together with Usanga and Mr. Han, were now surrounded by hordes of zombies. Kim Dokja told them to get down, and at the same time, the ichthyosaur finally destroyed the bridge. Kim Dokja was wobbling as he slowly stood up. When he came to his senses, he was surprised to see the state of the bridge. He hadn't expected Mr. Han and Usanga to have survived. Kim Dokja noticed that the kid and Hyunsung Lee had made it to safety in one piece, and they were shouting something, although he couldn't hear it. He was wondering what would happen next, when suddenly a message showed up, stating that someone had received the blessing of a constellation. The constellation's blessing had activated Deus Ex Machina, the bridge of even numbers, in the scenario. It was a bridge of light created by the blessing of a constellation, and could only be crossed by an even number of people. If an odd number of people attempted to cross it, the bridge would collapse. Usanga told Kim Dokja that something had suddenly appeared on her head. Kim Dokja was in awe, wondering if Usanga's supporting constellation had intervened in order to save her. Deus Ex Machina was a power that allowed a constellation to directly intervene in the scenario, at a great cost. However, Kim Dokja thought that this kind of intervention was rare even in TWSA. He wondered what kind of a constellation could be supporting her, so he decided to peek at Usanga's character profile. Upon checking her profile, however, he learned that Usanga's profile couldn't be browsed using his skill. Kim Dokja was confused as to why he couldn't browse her profile with his skill. He wondered if she had a special constellation supporting her, or if she had the mental barrier skill. Kim Dokja, however, was doubtful to believe it, as there was no way Usanga could already have that skill. Usanga then yelled at him, alerting him to look behind him. With her help, Kim Dokja managed to dodge and make a counterattack. Kim Dokja thought that it wasn't the time to be lost in thought. Tier 9 Humanoid Demon, a mutant species infected by the Black Ether. Once normal humans, humanoid demons were no different from zombies. But they could be quite dangerous if their host happened to be someone who was powerful, and of all people, it had to be Namwon Kim. Kim Dokja activated his Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint skill, but the character he was targeting did not possess a consciousness, so his skill was automatically deactivated. Kim Dokja thought that he had a feeling it wouldn't work. Kim Dokja thought that all they could do now was to get across the bridge of even numbers somehow, but there were 3 of them right now. Kim Dokja, Sangha, and Mr. Han, and one of them had to stay behind and die. Kim Dokja turned around and was about to say something when he saw Mr. Han carrying Usanga. Kim Dokja was dumbfounded. Mr. Han then immediately ran off, and Kim Dokja was so angry he couldn't believe that Mr. Han had left him. A system message then pops up, stating that the secretive plotter was impressed by Kim Dokja's foolishness, and the demonic judge of fire was touched by Kim Dokja's selflessness. He tried to use his character profile skill on them, but it still didn't work. He thought that the reason it didn't work was because Usanga and Mr. Han were not part of TWSA. The zombies then rushed towards him, and Kim Dokja was trying to think of a way to cross the bridge. He had an idea to grab a demon to cross the bridge with him, but he thought it was probably not going to work. Only 15 minutes were left until the scenario ended, and the Dakibi was watching him casually. The Dakibi said that Kim Dokja was doing pretty well. He then asked the constellations watching him if anybody wished to bless Kim Dokja, but nobody responded. The Dakibi said that it was unfortunate. Kim Dokja was now cornered, thinking that his body couldn't handle much more than this. If he stepped back, he would fall to the sea, but if he stepped forward, he would have to face the horde of zombies. In the predicament he was facing, he thought that he might actually die this time. He thought that if only he had just one combat skill, it wouldn't be this hard. Suddenly, a system message popped up, stating that Kim Dokja's personal skill bookmark had been activated. A huge book-like hologram appeared. Upon seeing the system message, he was surprised, wondering what bookmark was for. A system message then popped up, with a list of bookmarked characters: Delusional Demon Namwon Kim, Steel Blade Hyeon Seong Lee, and an empty slot. Kim Dokja thought that he had read over 3,000 episodes of TWSA, but he had never read about the bookmark skill anywhere. However, he still instinctively understood how it worked. Kim Dokja activated the bookmark number 1, and a system message popped up, stating that the activation time had been shortened due to the low level of the bookmark skill. Kim Dokja's understanding of Namwon's character was low, so the character's skills were only partially activated. He activated Grimdark Awakening level 1, and used this skill to one-hit kill the zombie version of Namwon Kim. Kim Dokja was still fighting against the zombie horde, saying that he was exhausted. He also mentioned that the main character was late, but he should be showing up any moment now. A loud explosion could be heard at the back of the horde, and the zombies were getting attracted by it. A man wearing a black robe was walking casually while killing the zombies in his path. Kim Dokja said, "There he is." The man in the black robe, who was known as Yoo Jung-hyuk, asked Kim Dokja who he was. Kim Dokja felt the pressure, thinking that he wouldn't stand a chance if he had to go up against Yoo Jung-hyuk. Yoo Jung-hyuk grabbed Kim Dokja's neck and asked him how he was still alive. In the first way of surviving the apocalypse, this man, who was strangling Kim Dokja, was living proof of the first method. Yoo Jung-hyuk, the regressor, was the man who would kickstart the tragedy that would turn the world upside down. On the other side of the broken bridge, Hyeon Seong Lee was attempting to find out what was happening on the other side. However, it wasn't working as there was a barrier, much like the one in the subway. Yoo Sang-ga was worried about Kim Dokja. Meanwhile, on the other side of the bridge, Yoo Jung-hyuk grabbed Kim Dokja and hung him in the air, asking him what his name was. Kim Dokja thought that Yoo Jung-hyuk was full of himself, acting the part of a protagonist. Kim Dokja told him his name, to which Yoo Jung-hyuk replied that it was a strange one. Kim Dokja said that he got that a lot. Yoo Jung-hyuk then punched him in the stomach and said that Kim Dokja had a strong body, before adding that Kim Dokja had already figured out how to use the coins. Kim Dokja was punched again for trying to talk back, and he wondered how Yoo Jung-hyuk was so strong when they had only cleared one main mission and were just now clearing a sub-mission. He thought that Yoo Jung-hyuk was a monster. Yoo Jung-hyuk then instructed Kim Dokja not to waste his breath and to answer the questions he was asked. Kim Dokja was thinking that this was the worst, and that he had been hoping it wouldn't happen. In the early chapters, Jung-hyuk is the most dangerous character in the world of TWSA. He had lost his humanity after having regressed 3 times already. The Jung-hyuk now would not hesitate to do whatever it took to get what he wanted. Kim Dokja said, "Fine," to which Yoo Jung-hyuk told him to show him some respect. But Kim Dokja said that he didn't have to. Jung-hyuk punched him again, but was blocked this time. Jung-hyuk was surprised that his punch had been blocked. Kim Dokja then had a smile on his face and mentioned pro-gamer Jung-hyuk, telling Jung-hyuk that he was younger than him. He further added that Yoo Jung-hyuk was the one who should show him some respect. Yoo Jung-hyuk then asked Kim Dokja if he knew him, to which he replied saying, "Of course." He said he worked for a game company, but it was a lie. Jung-hyuk was but a fictional character to him, existing in TWSA, that is, until now. Kim Dokja mentioned that Yoo Jung-hyuk was pretty famous, saying that he used to be a fan of Jung-hyuk. Kim Dokja was thinking that Jung-hyuk's fame was just a setting in the novel, but he wasn't lying when he said that he used to be a fan of Jung-hyuk. He thought to himself that he had liked him, hated him, resented him, and cheered for him. He had been with Jung-hyuk throughout his 3,000 episode journey. Jung-hyuk said that he hadn't heard that in a while, and said that he would forgive Kim Dokja for his impudence. However, Jung-hyuk clarified that this wouldn't change anything. Kim Dokja replied saying he could see that. Jung-hyuk then mentioned that he had only one question for Kim Dokja, and that is how had he managed to survive the subway. Kim Dokja thought that he had known Jung-hyuk would ask him that. He then asked Yoo Jung-hyuk if he would let him live if he told him. Jung-hyuk replied that it depended on his answer. Kim Dokja thought to himself that he could tell just by looking at Jung-hyuk's face that he was lying. He further added that he wasn't the only reader of TWSA for nothing. He then wondered what he could say to make Jung-hyuk let him live. A system message then popped up, informing Kim Dokja that his understanding of Jung-hyuk had increased, and that he already had a high understanding of Jung-hyuk's character. Another system message then came up, saying that Kim Dokja had unlocked level 2 of his personal skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, with an option to activate it. He activated his leveled up skill and was surprised to find out that he could now read Junghyuk's mind. He then smirked, thinking that he could use this skill against Junghyuk. Kim Dokja then answered Junghyuk's question by telling him that he had cleared the scenario by killing insects, which surprised Junghyuk. Kim Dokja further explained that he had been lucky to have spotted the kid with insects, as he had fallen due to the explosion in the car in front of them. Junghyuk was left wondering, thinking that the future had changed. He was wondering if he was the one that had caused the changes, thinking if it was because he had started out by killing them with an explosion, unlike in his previous runs. Junghyuk was staring at Kim Dokja while thinking that something wasn't right. He found it unusual that Kim Dokja was too calm for a newbie. He also thought that the world had turned upside down, but Kim Dokja was taking it in stride, abnormally so. Junghyuk concluded that Kim Dokja must have been the one who killed Namwon Kim, so he thought that Kim Dokja was dangerous. Kim Dokja then told him to let him go if he was done with his questions, telling him to move on to Oksu station together and that they were running out of time. Junghyuk replied saying not yet, as he was suspicious of Kim Dokja because everything fit too perfectly. So he used his SS grade skill called the Eye of the Sage on Kim Dokja. Kim Dokja knew the skill Junghyuk was using, and was alerted. He thought to himself that the Eye of the Sage not only allowed you to see someone's attributes window, but also someone's hidden information, and it was the highest grade detection skill. He had been wondering why Junghyuk wasn't using it, but he thought that maybe it was for the best, since he also didn't know what his attributes were or what skills he had. He further added that even if Junghyuk found out what they were, if he could know as well. Suddenly, a system message popped up, informing Kim Dokja that his personal skill, the fourth wall, had been activated. Kim Dokja's skill was able to detect the detection skill Junghyuk was using and blocked it, causing Junghyuk to wobble. Junghyuk was left wondering who Kim Dokja was, with only 2 minutes remaining for the sub-scenario. Kim Dokja was dumbfounded, unable to believe that he had a skill that could block the Eye of the Sage. Junghyuk thought that he would have to kill Kim Dokja there and then, and Kim Dokja was able to read Junghyuk's mind, so he knew that Junghyuk was planning to kill him. Kim Dokja was angry that he had complicated things, and he knew that there was no way Junghyuk would believe him now. So, he decided to change his game plan and reminded Junghyuk that he needed a trustworthy ally. He further added that Junghyuk couldn't clear scenario 46 on his own. Junghyuk asked Kim Dokja how he knew that, asking if he was also a regressor. Kim Dokja replied, saying that what mattered now wasn't who he was, but rather what he could be of use to him. Junghyuk thought that Kim Dokja wasn't a regressor, otherwise he would know him. Kim Dokja then told Junghyuk that he knew the future that Junghyuk didn't know. Upon hearing this, Junghyuk immediately activated his lie detection skill, which verified that Kim Dokja was telling the truth. Junghyuk was shocked, stepping back a little bit. He thought that it couldn't be, wondering if there could be another prophet other than Anna Croft in Korea. The prophet is the only attribute in TWSA that allows a character to see into the future, and the only attribute to passively neutralize detection skills. To Kim Dokja's knowledge, there was one character who had the prophet attribute in the world of TWSA. Junghyuk asked Kim Dokja if, by any chance, he could be able to use future sight. Kim Dokja replied, saying something like that. Junghyuk asked if he knew he would be there, to which Kim Dokja replied yes. Kim Dokja then told Junghyuk that he was aware that Junghyuk had a special power and that he also knew what was going to happen in the future, adding that the knowledge Junghyuk had of the future was incomplete. Regressors know the future because they have repeated their lives several times over, but their futures will change if they change the present with that information. Therefore, all regressors will eventually reach a future they don't know unless they repeat everything they did in their past run. Therefore, someone like Junghyuk would find it very attractive to have a prophet as a companion, and Kim Dokja would act as his prophet because he was the only reader of the story. Kim Dokja then told Junghyuk to make him his companion and that he could complete Junghyuk's knowledge of the future. Junghyuk thought that if Kim Dokja was indeed a prophet, it would be helpful to bring him along, not just for scenario 46, but also for fighting the Zarathustra. However, he was wondering if he could trust Kim Dokja. Eventually, Junghyuk made up his mind and decided to make Kim Dokja his companion. As Junghyuk dragged him, Kim Dokja coughed, telling him to let him go. Kim Dokja and Jung-hyuk then crossed the broken bridge with the help of the Deus Ex Machina, and Kim Dokja felt relieved that he was now safe. He couldn't believe he managed to convince the regressor. Excessive concentration had caused Kim Dokja to become worn out, and his skill Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint automatically deactivated. Kim Dokja was a bit anxious that his skill was being deactivated, but he had done everything he could and had convinced Jung-hyuk in no time. Kim Dokja thought that he could now cross the bridge when suddenly Jung-hyuk stopped and asked him a question that if Kim Dokja really was a prophet, would he be able to tell his own future? Kim Dokja had a bad feeling about this. Jung-hyuk then lifted him up and walked near the end of the bridge, where a sea monster was ready to devour him. Jung-hyuk asked Kim Dokja if he would let him go or not. Kim Dokja closed his eyes, thinking that Jung-hyuk was a damn psychopath. He thought to himself that he knew him better than anyone else, and that if Jung-hyuk was the same Jung-hyuk that he had read of. Kim Dokja told him that he had a couple of things to say first, which surprised Jung-hyuk. First, Kim Dokja declared that he was not Jung-hyuk's lackey, and that Jung-hyuk should treat him as an equal. Then, Kim Dokja suggested that just as he was willing to cooperate with Jung-hyuk, he should also promise to cooperate with him. Jung-hyuk replied, saying, "I see." He then asked for Kim Dokja's answer. Kim Dokja called him a bastard and told him to just let go already and get lost. Jung-hyuk then let go of his hand, causing Kim Dokja to fall. Jung-hyuk smiled, saying he believed Kim Dokja was really a prophet. Kim Dokja was about to be eaten by the sea monster, and he had failed to clear the scenario. Kim Dokja was inside the sea monster's mouth, struggling to hold his breath. He knew he had to keep going, and he couldn't pass out. Kim Dokja managed to get out of the water, retching and coughing. He thought that he had made it to the monster's stomach without being ripped apart and digested. He used his phone's flashlight to look around, and to his horror, he saw a sea of dead bodies. Kim Dokja swam towards a flat floating stone, and said to himself that Jung-hyuk was a psychopath. He wondered if this was some kind of a test, and if Jung-hyuk wanted him to prove his worth as a companion. Kim Dokja did understand why Jung-hyuk was doing this, though. Jung-hyuk had never made a true companion since he had failed his first ever round. Because of this, Jung-hyuk had naturally become a lone wolf. To him, all humans were either his subordinates or his enemies, so this was most likely a test. Kim Dokja further added that Jung-hyuk wanted him to prove himself if he wanted to be treated as Jung-hyuk's equal. Being a regressor, Jung-hyuk was powerful, and people revered him as their savior. Kim Dokja was sitting casually on a floating flat stone, reading his system message log, when he found a couple of messages. Suddenly, the inside of the sea monster started to shake, indicating that the sea monster was on the move. Kim Dokja thought to himself that, according to TWSA, the stomachs of these ichthyosaurs started secreting acid around 3 minutes after they ingested their prey. In other words, he didn't have a lot of time left. Suddenly, a Dakibi appeared, saying that he was a bit disappointed because it was starting to get interesting. Kim Dokja said, "The Dakibi?" The Dakibi replied, "Yes, it's me." But he realized that Kim Dokja was not flustered at all, despite his situation. Kim Dokja replied, saying that he had been waiting for him, which made the Dakibi confused. Kim Dokja thought to himself that not only would he get out of there in one piece, but he would also obtain the power to stand as Jung-hyuk's equal. He further added that Jung-hyuk would have no choice but to accept him as his companion. The Dakibi asked Kim Dokja if he was waiting for him, to which Kim Dokja replied, "Yes." He further added that the Dakibi had coins to collect from him. He told him that since he had failed the scenario, the Dakibi had to take Kim Dokja's coins as a penalty. The Dakibi asked why coins and not his life. Kim Dokja explained that if the Dakibi were going to take his life, the penalty for failure would have said death, instead of the 3 question marks. He further added that it only meant that there was room for negotiation. The Dakibi laughed a bit while saying that it was interesting, and was impressed that Kim Dokja had managed to come to such a conclusion from that tiny clue, adding that it was no wonder all the constellations had their eyes on Kim Dokja. The Dakibi told Kim Dokja that as he had said, he could buy his way out of failed sub-scenarios using coins. The price would be 5,100 coins, that's how much it would cost for Kim Dokja to save his neck. Kim Dokja looked at the coins he possessed and saw that it was exactly the same amount the Dakibi was asking for, thinking that the Dakibi had to be kidding him. Kim Dokja told him that it was too expensive, to which the Dakibi responded, saying that Kim Dokja could go ahead and die. He added that he was doing Kim Dokja a favor. The Dakibi then relaxingly said that if Kim Dokja didn't want to pay up, he could just call it quits there and then. But the Dakibi didn't expect Kim Dokja to dare him to kill him. The Dakibi was left speechless by what Kim Dokja had said. Kim Dokja said, "You can't, can you?" Kim Dokja was thinking that the Dakibi wouldn't lay a finger on him because he was drawing in quite a crowd for the Dakibi right now. He thought to himself that right now, the constellations were having a blast because of him, and if the Dakibi was just going to kill Kim Dokja, he wouldn't have come all the way there to see him. The Dakibi was angry, staring at Kim Dokja menacingly, asking him what it was that he was trying to pull. Kim Dokja then mentioned a low-grade Dakibi, Bi Young, which made the Dakibi alerted. Kim Dokja asked Bi Young how his career as a streamer was going, assuming that it wasn't going well and adding that the constellations had been rather stingy as of late. Bi Young was trembling, and stutteringly asked Kim Dokja how he knew this. Bi Young then asked Kim Dokja who he was, wondering how a mere human could know this. A system message then popped up, stating that a few constellations had become suspicious of Kim Dokja's identity. Another system message then appeared, stating that the eyes of the constellation, secretive plotter, sparkled at Kim Dokja's plan. Kim Dokja whispered at Bi Young, telling him to shut off the channel for a minute so that they could talk, to which Bi Young did. After Bi Young had turned off the stream, he asked Kim Dokja how he knew about the star stream when he was only a human. The star stream system, also known as star stream, was the means by which footage was broadcast over the entire galaxy. The subscribers were constellations who resided in galaxies far, far away, and the actors were humans like Kim Dokja. The Dakibi were called streamers, and they were the storytellers that bridged the two. Kim Dokja, while casually sitting, said that that wasn't important right now, and then asked Bi Young if he wanted to be the Dakibi king. Bi Young was about to say something when Kim Dokja asked him if he didn't want to surpass the likes of Dokgak or Gildal and become the best streamer there ever was. Kim Dokja then reached out his hand and asked Bi Young to enter a contract with him, promising that he would make Bi Young the Dakibi king. After hearing what Kim Dokja had said, Bi Young was left astounded. That's it for today. Up next, will Bi Young accept the offer of Dokja Kim? And how will he get out of the sea monster? If you love this manhwa recap and you want me to continue or focus my uploads on this one, just comment part 2. By the way, don't forget to like and share this video if you find this video entertaining. See you next time.